Welcome to Fresh Outlook. I'm Mia Toschi. Always nice to spend an hour with you as we take a look at the news affecting you. We have a busy show this week. We're going to be talking about Syria and the conflict that has already claimed the lives of more than 80,000 people. Most people now agree Syria is becoming a regional conflict. We're also going to be discussing domestic violence. According to the United States Office on Violence Against Women, a woman is assaulted every 9 seconds in this country, and 3 women die each day at the hands of a husband or boyfriend. The question, why is domestic violence on the rise? We will also be talking about the Bradley Manning trial, which began this week. Is he a traitor or a hero? Well, that is turning into a heated debate. And finally, we're going to shuffle off to Broadway and talk about the Tony Awards, which are being held this week. But as sales continue to decline on Broadway, will the lights be dimming too on these elaborate shows? So there's a lot to talk about. Let's get to it and introduce our panel. Joining us today is political analyst Dee Dee Benkie, and we have 2 political science professors from Rutgers University, Hamid Abdeljaber and Stephen Bronner. We welcome you all to the show. Thank you. And we are talking about Syria. The numbers are staggering, more than 80,000 people dead. The question is, who are these rebel fighters? And that brings us to our first story.
Fighting continued in the besieged town of Qusair over the weekend. The situation in the border town is precarious, as it has become a strategic epicenter for the 3rd week. Appeals by the United Nations to allow humanitarian workers to enter Qusair have gone unheeded. The U.S. and Germany are monitoring the situation as it endangers a peace conference in the works.
The world is seeing the actions of a person who has lost touch with any reality except his own, and who is willing to wreak any kind of punishment on his own, on the people of his country, simply so that he can maintain power. So this situation is obviously intolerable, unacceptable by any standard.
Elsewhere, Russia blocked a UN Security Council declaration on the siege of Al-Qusair over the weekend. It said it amounted to a demand for a unilateral ceasefire by troops over a counter-terrorist operation. According to Syria's state-run news agency, the Red Cross will only be able to enter Qusair after the end of military operations. Syrian troops, alongside Hezbollah fighters, have gained ground, but rebels have been able to defend some positions and appear to be dug in the north and west of the town. Rocket attacks were also reported across Damascus, especially in the Jobar neighborhood.
Oh, that is really something when we take a look at that. Again, we have our panel here, Dee Dee Benkie, Hamid Abdeljaber, and Stephen Bronner. And gentlemen, thank you. You're both from Rutgers University, and you just won a very prestigious, you were honored with a very prestigious award from UNESCO. If you can tell us about that, Stephen.
Well, I'm one of the directors of the Center for the Study of Genocide, Conflict Resolution, and Human Rights. And UNESCO decided to bequeath a chair to our center for genocide prevention. So we're very excited about that.
Well, we want to thank you very much and for being here as we talk about Syria. And this is such a growing conflict in this region. They're saying now that there's more refugees right now, millions of refugees in 5 different countries, and the numbers are just going to get bigger. Dee Dee, we're going to start with you. Right now, it doesn't look like this is going to go away. They're saying this is going to become a regional conflict. What are your thoughts?
It's dire, and I think Senator McCain is right, who just visited, and thanks to our good friends in Turkey, he was able to cross over from there. And he feels like we need to arm and to be supportive of the rebels. And it seems like that's the best option, because as it escalates, if Israel gets more and more involved, that does not help the situation. So going the rebel route is probably best.
And is this an extension of the Arab Spring that we saw just last year? Is that where we think this is starting? And if one of you professors there can give us an overview as to how this all came about.
Yeah, I could say that. I mean, it started as a part of the Arab Spring. The Syrian people who've been under oppressive regime for over 40 years, they saw their brothers in Tunisia and Egypt, Yemen, Bahrain, Libya going to the street asking for their freedom and dignity. So they said, why not us? So they went into a peaceful demonstration in the beginning, but the reaction of the regime was swift and ruthless from the very beginning. And that what got the Syrian uprising into more lethal phase. In fact, there was some defection from the army which joined the rebels, and that gave the regime an excuse to use force and excessive force. Well, and the division of the Security Council did not help the situation, because the Syrian regime felt it is protected from any kind of condemnation or intervention.
Well, it doesn't look like Bashar al-Assad is going away anytime.
I don't think so. I think it's a very complicated situation. There's no figure and there's no symbol at the moment that would bring the two sides together. The problem from Bashar's standpoint is it's not Bashar. It's rather the Alawite community, the Christian community, is very, very concerned about the rebels. And it's clear that the most organized group among the rebels is the al-Nusra Front, which is connected to Al-Qaeda. Now, if I can just say one more thing. When there's a disorganized opposition, it's always the case, not sometimes the case, always the case, especially when it turns to violence, that the more centralized authoritarian group is going to go to the top.
And I was just going to say, one of the key things that has to be identified to be able to resolve this kind of conflict is, who are these rebel fighters? My sense of this, I've done some work with the Syrian exile community here, and I think it's pretty well reflected in the National Council, the Syrian Council. What becomes evident is a fundamental balkanization of the opposition, and a lack of clarity about what to do with Bashar al-Assad once if he should fall. Well, who should decide right now the future of Syria? And do the Syrians have a say right now? I mean, Dee Dee?
Well, look, I just think, again, I think Senator McCain is right. You know, he just met with the general of the Free Syrian Army, and we cannot let it escalate more and more. And, you know, our friends Israel, they're in peril. I mean, they are under, attack. They have the threat and they're concerned. And if they get involved and it more and more and it escalates, then we're going to have a real problem in the Middle East.
Well, I was just
we need to try to stabilize the Middle East. And right now, it looks like the rebels are our best bet.
We're seeing all those images of Israeli soldiers over there getting ready for what many are calling an inevitable war with Hezbollah, obviously the Lebanese Shiite militant group. But if these two go at it, how serious? I mean, how bad is this going to get? Is this one of the biggest threats we've seen since a World War III?
It's very serious. I mean, these gentlemen are the experts, but this is not good.
No, it's not good. Definitely not good.
I mean, do you see this escalating? Obviously, many people are calling this now a regional conflict.
I think that was
but
true
could this
from the
become
beginning.
A world war conflict?
A world war?
It is getting into a regional conflict. Hezbollah has been interfering. It helped recapture the city of Qusair, which is on the border with Lebanon, and it is continuing to help the regime. Iran is involved, as well as many other regional powers like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, and Russia as well. So I think we reached a situation where there is kind of parity. No one will win over the other. And I think now the idea of Geneva II is the only solution on the table. And now there is a meeting just concluded between the between the Russian foreign minister and the U.S. foreign minister, who met in Geneva with the UN Special Envoy Lakhdar Ibrahimi, and they are organizing a conference in the middle of July to bring all the parties together. There are many obstacles, of course, especially among the Syrian opposition, because they disagree so far who will represent the Syrian. But I think this conflict has no military solution, and I don't agree with military intervention, and I don't agree with McCain infiltrating coming from the border to the Syrian to stand with one group against the other.
And Dee Dee, you're shaking your head
there. Yeah, I mean,
there.
it's nice to have a little lunch and have a chat about it, but Syrians are dying, at the hands of this monster. So the little chat isn't going to do any good. You think that guy's going to listen to anyone? He hasn't, and he won't.
And the figures, you know, we really don't know the exact figures. They're estimating that 80,000 at this point have died, mostly women and children. So let's talk about the refugee, because it's not just resolving this conflict, it's also this growing refugee problem. You have a country of 20 million, but 3.5 million people have already left into 5 countries. Lebanon's already said they can't handle it. What happens now?
You know, you see a very similar situation to Iraq. And the same people who have been pushing military intervention here pushed it in Iraq. I was in Iraq before the war. One would have to be a complete idiot to think that there were weapons of mass destruction.
Okay, there's no reason to start bashing Bush.
Yeah,
really, I mean, has nothing to do with this. It really doesn't. I mean, are you saying people aren't dying in Syria and we don't have the refugees? It's not a serious situation?
If I can. What I'm saying is both countries had a Ba'ath Party. Both countries are affected by a Shia-Sunni split. Both countries have a fragile democracy at best, or had a fragile, will have a fragile democracy at best. Both had dictators, and both lack national figures outside of those dictators to bring this group together. What we've seen is the only thing that has brought Iraqis together, ironically, is the American intervention, and both sides attacked the United States. I think that's exactly what would happen in Syria.
I just want to add one thing about the humanitarian situation. The UN has just published a report yesterday saying that about 5 million is now in dire need of assistance, and by the end of the year, 1 out of every 2 Syrians need that. And they launched an appeal of $5 billion in emergency fund to help refugees and a humanitarian situation in Syria. And if the international community does not put their act together and rescue the situation in Syria, we will see one of the most tragic humanitarian disaster in the 21st century.
The EU just pledged $530 million, but they're saying that it's going to cost about $5 billion. And they're really doing enormous. I was saying to Dee Dee earlier, my hairdresser actually is from Aleppo and Damascus, and her family had to travel through, and they said they have photos, and they said that if you could, it's just unimaginable. The entire city completely destroyed. I mean, we see these bombs going off, but we don't really know what it's like there on the ground. Yeah. But she said that the worst thing was getting to, they were trying to get to Lebanon, and they had a teenage boy with them, and they were afraid that he would be shot. So that's how they were stopping all the cars. But it's so serious for these refugees right now, and a lot of the countries are saying we simply can't handle it. What happens on that end?
That end is usually the collateral damage argument. That's exactly what happened with Iraq again. 2.5 million refugees were sent out, left Iraq during the invasion. Now, right, with Syria, that's going to be multiplied, and the United States has literally washed its hands of that problem. That's the problem we should be focusing on. I agree with that. We have Jordan. We have all these different.
Well, we see Obama right there. Why has he stayed so far away from addressing the Syrian problem?
Well, he shouldn't. He should be engaged because the red line's been crossed. I mean, what, you think chemical weapons have not been used on these people?
Yeah, but you don't know who used them. The UN has just come out. Excuse me. The UN has just today come out with a report from 3 different people, 3 different officials. You can see it in the Times.
Well, the Times, yeah, that's the. I'm going to list everything they say. Go ahead.
Well, it's a paper of record, but that this is indeed the case. There's no certainty at all, and we fall into the same thing.
Let me go back to the question: Why has Obama stayed silent on this issue for so long? Now he's starting to speak out about this now, but the Syrian problem has long been ignored. Why was he silent?
The point is that Obama distanced himself from the Syrian issue after it became apparent that there are these extremists came from all over, from Chechnya, from North Africa, from Libya, from Yemen, came to join the fight, and it became this Nusra front became the strongest unit of the opposition, and they openly declared their affiliation with Al-Qaeda, so that Obama has to be careful, because these weapons could end up in the hands of those opposition.
But the problem was he wasn't careful to begin with. Remember, he made the very bold statement, they crossed the red line, we're going and we're going to be helpful, and then nothing happened. That was very bad. It makes us look weak. It was a mistake.
Well, should the U.S. get involved at this point?
I think it should get involved with humanitarian aid efforts, but I have no idea who those military groups are that would get the weapons that are given. One of the problems with Syria.
Well, no, let's talk about weapons. McCain recently obviously visited the region, and he supports weapons for the rebels.
Yeah, but the rebels are so balkanized, you don't know who's who.
Well, that was my
Well,
that was my very initial question. Who are these rebel groups,
There are
and
so
how do you
many.
identify them?
I mean, Lakhdar Ibrahimi reported there are more than 33 different rebel groups, so you don't know whom you're talking to. But there are three major ones who are considered to be liberals, leftists, and mostly Democrats. However, again, it is very hard for the Obama administration to keep his hands off. I mean, in my opinion, the Obama administration is obliged to get involved with this arrangement of a peace conference in Geneva or Geneva II. They have to work hard with the Russians, with the region, and not to exclude Iran or Saudi Arabia the way they did a year ago, which made things worse.
Exactly.
Bring them over and have a comprehensive peace conference similar to what happened in Dayton, Ohio, 1995 over Bosnia, and it was solved.
All right, I'm going to ask one last question on this, and then we're going to wrap this up. We're going to talk about Israel. How likely is it that Israel is going to be pulled into this? Dee Dee?
Well, they could very well be pulled. I mean, they're going to defend themselves. They have to. You know, and it's getting to the point where they're going to have to step in, and we don't want that. I mean, that's going to make everything escalate very quickly, and it's going to destabilize the region worse than it is. So we need to step in. We need to be leaders.
Why Israel has to be, I mean, the spoiled party in this? I mean, the Syrian people are dying, and we should focus on Syria.
But
and how
right
to
now, the question
I mean,
is we're seeing images of Israeli soldiers. So very quickly, do you think they're going to be pulled into this?
I doubt for the time being. I think the Israelis are distancing themselves, and they're letting the parties fight each other to the end, and that's in the best interest of Israel to see Arabs fighting with each other and seeing sectarian war taking over in Syria, Iraq, and many other countries.
Gentlemen, Dee and Dee Dee, I'm sorry we are out of time on this segment, but don't go away anyway. We're going to be talking about another troubling topic, and that is domestic violence. It's on the rise, and it kills 3 women every day here in the United States. We'll be right back.